Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live coming to you every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesdays, we do pitch decks, and that's what we're here for today. We are going to do pitch deck reviews, everyone. Make sure you send us your pitch decks. That's the email address, making it as easy as possible for you to send in your pitch decks. If you're part of the community, if you're not part of the community, come one, come all. We are ready for your pitch decks. Send them in. We want to feature you. If you would like a review here on this channel, while you're here, do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe. Totally appreciated. Will, we got a special one coming up today. We've both been working with this founder. It's called Dating Sphere, and super excited to get your take on it because you are emotionally invested in this. I'm emotionally invested in this, and that's what we do here. But before we continue, I just want to do a little housekeeping and share with everyone that this show and everything we do is brought to you by us and a cool feature called member matching. You're the CEO founder of Startups.com, and I was using this fancy tool the other day, and I was actually looking for someone to help with AI app development to actually help another founder. And I got connected, and I already know this founder, which is great. So I know the matches are really solid and accurate. Will, give us a little preview. What are we looking at? What's your invitation to everybody out there?
Yeah, I mean, look, the big reason we built this is I would say all of these people are available anywhere else on the internet. You can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them on social media, etc. But I would say that about anybody. I think the reason people use our tool to find like advisors and co-founders and potential customers, service providers, etc., is because all of the people on here are highly specific to startups. Like these are people super, super, super engaged in the startup community. So you look for people on here specifically because they're kind of pre-vetted to be startup people. If you ever had to hire people, I don't care whether you were trying to like hire a lawyer or you were trying to hire someone for your staff, Ed, you could probably agree, there is a different breed when it comes to people who are specifically startup focused, right?
Right.
Our mindset is different, our approach is different. You know, we tend to be way more risk tolerant, we tend to be way more aggressive in all the right ways. And so basically getting all of these people under one roof and be able to search for exactly what you need from them, I think is a big deal.
That's fabulous. Yep. I've been playing with the tool, and I cannot say enough about how amazing it is. And just to be able to have the AI sort of give you a little ditty and explain, here's why it's good for you, man, it's exciting times, Will. Totally exciting.
Mm-hmm. AI to the rescue. They figured out how to find exactly who you want, even if you're not sure. I love it.
That's it. Okay, so for everyone, once again, we're doing pitch deck reviews. Send us your decks. And I wanted to highlight this, Will. This is what we got going on. Pitch competition, everyone. Pitch competition. So you can receive $5,000 advisory and investor relations package from us. And what's going to happen is it's chosen by our committee. And here are the factors that we're looking for, Will. We're looking at the idea.
Yep.
Do the investors in our database, do we believe that they would invest in this idea? Because we're going to help you raise capital. The deck, we want to make sure founders are communicating properly. Obviously, a lot of resources. That's why we're here today. Team, that's the number one thing, Will, is that, you know, investors are looking for exceptional teams. But also, we're looking for founders that you may not have necessarily the pedigree that other teams have. Maybe you haven't done a VC and you haven't had an exit before.
Yeah.
But if you demonstrate the character, the competence, the persistence, we can make a recommendation and say, yeah, you're the right team. And traction, well, we talk about this all the time, and that's why we have our session on Wednesdays. And how do you get selected? Just participate in our community. We will find you as you submit your decks, as you show up at our workshops, as we watch you. We're going to say, wow, we think that you're a great candidate. And we're going to make sure that you get selected. Will, what's exciting to you about this, just to help founders in this way?
Well, I mean, just to dovetail off what we just talked about a second ago, now we can help you find your team. We can help you build your team. A lot of people are like, well, I can't hire my team yet. That's the point. We can help you find people who aren't ready to take the plunge yet with you, but once we either find funding or hit a milestone, can kind of grow along with you. So I like the fact that, yes, we've been helping people find investors for almost 15 years now, but now we can take it to another level and fill out all your advisors, even find a co-founder if it was necessary. It's part of what we're doing.
Yeah, Will, you've done this 9 times, 5 exits. I've done this 7 times, 2 exits. And Will, we didn't have tools like this when we were going in the beginning.
I was talking to a friend of mine today at lunch, another great founder, a venture-funded founder, in fact. And I was telling him how when I was getting started 31 years ago, I didn't have any tools. And I was trying to explain to him how it was 1994, and I was trying to explain to people what the internet was going to be. Right? I was like, not only did I not have tools, but the thing that needed to be built, web pages and the internet, hadn't been built yet. And my job was to go build some of the first web pages on the internet.
Make sure, everyone, Appreciate the live audience that's joined us as part of the Startups.com community. Make sure you use the Q&A box or chat to ask questions. You can interrupt us, challenge us, throw down the gauntlet, abscond the agenda. We're here. We want to prioritize your questions. Will, let's take a look at this and let's set it up here.
Yeah.
So this is Dating Sphere, and I really enjoyed meeting this founder. In fact, I spent some extra time with him, and it's actually not that I'm dating, but this is a problem that I've encountered, explored. I have a lot of friends who are struggling with this, and therefore I had a unique interest. And I know you put in some reps with this founder, and so I want to set it up. And full disclosure, we have spent time, and we're going to show you some best practices. I looked through the deck. Clearly, Will, your fingerprints are all over this bad boy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to react to it a little bit, and then you tell me what you like about it, you know, where this is going, and then obviously where you'd still like this founder to improve. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first thing I'm going to say is, and this is a little bit of a hint, I actually think that this founder is tackling maybe the biggest problem in the dating space. To point that out, again, Ed, you and I have been happily married for a long time, not together, but we've kind of skipped the dating app generation.
Oh, yeah.
But we all have tons of friends who are on them. And all of my friends that are on them, they all complain about how horrible online dating is, yet almost required in today's day and age.
What's funny, Will, and this is, you know, we talk to investors and we look at the market all the time. Even though people say, okay, this is a huge space and there's already major incumbents in it. In fact, there's one private equity company that controls pretty much half of the digital dating market in terms of the apps and the market penetration. And that's pretty big. Investors are saying, and I've heard this firsthand, we are still interested in the space because it's not being done very well. And with AI, if you can make this a 10x better than what's existing out there, the investment, the funding, it's all there. The market is ripe for the taking. And that's what we look for as investors, that's what we look for as advisors, and you should be looking for as founders.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting too, because we've just been in the startup space for a long time. Like, we've seen not only, like, you know, the stuff that we've worked on, but lots of other people's stuff too, and have had the benefit of, like, working with a lot of entrepreneurs even around these spaces. So, you know, one of the funny things is a friend of mine, Sean Rad, started Tinder. And Ed, I think I told you that my wife, Sarah, was his first employee, like way back in the day.
I had no idea. You
didn't know that? Oh, yeah. Just a short piece of history. Sean and I were both pitching at an event in Santa Monica, I think like 2007-ish. And we were both pitching different businesses, and we both got funding, and we were backstage talking to each other. And Sean was super young at the time. He's like 20. And I was like, hey, you know, I just got funding for my startup. Sean's like, yeah, I just got funding for my startup. I need to find like an operations person. I was like, that's funny, because my girlfriend, not yet my wife at the time, is moving to Santa Monica to come live with me. Would you hire her? And he's like, yeah. And so they met up. John hired her on the spot and was his first employee. And then in other ones, I mean, this is, you know, I'm kind of thinking through my Rolodex here. A guy, I'm going to get his name wrong because it's killing me. I haven't thought about him in a minute. Noah Biderman? I can't remember. He was the CEO of Ashley Madison. Remember the site that, like the dating site for people who want to like cheat on their spouses?
Oh, yeah. Scandalous.
I knew Noah before Ashley Madison, and he would tell me like what was happening there. That site was unbelievable. When it got hacked, Ed, when all the names got hacked,
oh man,
they had like 100 million users or something bananas like that. Like, it was off the charts. And he would tell me like that business printed money. And anyway, my point is, we've gotten to see so many different businesses evolve in so many different categories that we can take some of that domain knowledge, or what we've learned sitting on the sidelines in some cases, and apply it to these decks, to these companies.
Will, every time we talk and I learn a little more, the startup world gets smaller and smaller, and I go, where hasn't Will been? But that's the benefit. We're very fortunate to be able to spend this time. All right, let's jump in without further ado. I know we have the founder with us as well in the audience, so this should be pretty cool. Looking forward to the commentary. So, Will, I'm just going to make a comment, my first impression on this. You tell me what you think. So I look at this dating sphere, and I know what this startup does. For me, the tagline, matchmaking made digital, immediately I get a little hung up on that, because I start thinking, isn't matchmaking all digital right now? And therefore, it's just one of those little nitpicky things I do as an investor. I read that tagline, and usually I'm looking for just a description of what the startup does, or a purpose statement that explains to me what the startup does. But to me, I'm already, a little hung up. I'm nitpicky about it, but that's where I go.
I will forever be an ad guy, Ed. I spent the first 10 years of my career built an agency. I got to tell you, whenever I see stuff like this, the ad guy in me just constantly immediately wants to write copy, immediately wants to make design suggestions, immediately wants to act like this is my client, etc. And knowing what the product is, and our audience doesn't know what the product is exactly yet. There's something about me, and I normally wouldn't say this, that wants to make me, instead of those people holding hands, I want to see those two people back to back with the biggest frustrations on their face. And I want that tagline to say like these aren't the words, but like fixing what's so clearly broken in dating, right?
Right,
Like this
exactly.
idea that there's this consternation that's so painful. And what's so beautiful about this product, and I'm excited to talk about it, but what's so beautiful about the product is it nails the problem on the head. And I feel this is too amorphous. I feel like this could be the copy and the imagery for a million different things. And that always concerns me. It evokes no emotion.
Let's put out a little pro tip for everyone. Will, I know you live on ChatGPT. I do. I'm using all these Gen AI tools. Literally, you can upload and say, here's my tagline. Here's what my company stands for. Create for me a concept image that would illustrate, and it will literally do it for you. It's insane.
Every time I do it, Ed, all I can think to myself is we were spending millions upon millions of dollars per month, right, at the agency, paying people to do what ChatGPT does in 3 seconds, and it drives me insane. And I was one of those people, to be clear. I feel my value's been stolen.
Yeah, literally the other day, I created some graphics for a company, and I needed to have like two faces. I put like Elon Musk and some other guy, Richard Branson, in the background. I said, oh, let's swap them out for, this and that. And they were like, how did you do this? And that's where just want to give that advice to all the founders. Use the tools out there because you don't have to be using stock photography anymore.
Yeah.
Gen AI is got you covered. Let's get back to this. Some best practices. Right. Let's figure out how to improve this cover slide. We'll leave that to the founder just to be very straightforward. Okay. Problem. 53 million singles are consistently frustrated by the dishonesty on dating apps, from hookup seekers and spammers to outright scammers, leading to widespread misrepresentation of age, body type, education, and more. I like it.
At some level, I wrote this, and
sure.
So I'm gonna put that out there. I didn't write it exactly. The founder, who's awesome, took some of my ideas and put them in there. So I'm also saying this. So if I say that's the best I've ever seen, it's like, okay, it better be you wrote it. Here's and if you don't mind, can I talk about the evolution of what got us here?
Please do.
Because I think that helps. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to almost pitch on behalf of the founder at this point. And basically what we're saying is that most of the folks that go on to dating apps, almost all of my friends have said this specifically, they go on dating apps and they all say the same thing. It's bullshit. Right? Particularly my female friends are like, it's all guys trying to hook up, everybody lying about, who they are. It's totally fake. And then you meet these people, they're not who they say they are, or their intentions are clearly not what it made it look like. Right? So I get on there, I don't know who to trust. I don't trust the intentions, and I back away. And I got to tell you, the dating sites are well aware of this. There hasn't been a ton of innovation, shockingly, to truly address this problem.
Yeah.
When we got into it initially, and I want to make sure I get my facts somewhat straight here. I remember talking to the founder and saying, look, let's really get to the specific areas where people are frustrated. So if you go back to the slide, Ed, we could talk about dozens of things that people are frustrated by. But what I suggested to the founders is let's get to the most specific frustrations. Okay. Now, we've got leading to a widespread representation of age, body type, education. And I think one of the things that was kind of changed was intention. Intention. I think that was a big thing, right? Yeah. It basically comes down to, are you on here just to hook up, or do you want to have a relationship and or someday get married? And I think those are massive problems. And what I love about the problem statement and the product is that the premise, the problem, is very hard to dispute. Whether or not you can fix that problem, which should be the impetus of a deck, is different. But I love a problem that feels fairly indisputable. What do you think?
You're bang on. In fact, I was going to give you that feedback. That's what I picked up from this. Here's what I like about it. It balances the gap on both sides between someone who knows this problem and someone who maybe isn't as familiar. So someone who's experienced seeing my friends deal with this, hookup seekers, spammers, and outright scammers. I love that line. I'm like, oh yeah, no, totally get it. But then the language on the back end, widespread misrepresentation of age, body type, education, and then if you had intentions, that was just so straightforward. It's not buzzy, not hypey language. And I think that so many founders can take a page out of this that it crosses that line. Like it scratches that itch for, man, it hits me in the feels. It's emotional. At the same time, it's so crystal clear, like anybody can understand it.
Let me ask you this, Ed. How would you differentiate spammers from outright scammers? Because that sounds like the same thing to me, categorically.
Spammers, no, it's different because spammers are people like, will you date me? Will you date me? Will you date me? Hello, hello, hello. To scammers being like the people who are just catfishing. I have a friend. We got to talk about this for a moment. I just got to bring this up. I have a friend.
And is this one of those I have a friend, it's not really me, I'm asking for a friend moments?
Listen, this guy, 50 something years old, tells me, Ed, I met this girl online. She's great and everything. And then after a while, he says, Ed, I think I made a mistake. I sent her money. And I said, oh man, here we go.
What could
And
go wrong?
yeah, exactly. And she said she's coming, but then she had a hang up at the airport and she couldn't get her visa and she needed $3,000 really fast, etc. Will, he not only fell for it once, but twice, Will. Twice. Lightning hit twice. And that's what we're talking about, scammers out there.
Okay.
They exist.
Yeah, no, I get the scammer part. I get the scammer part. Okay. So in spammers being people who try to sell something. I may not have picked that up right away, but it's a tiny point and that could be on me. That's one of those things where maybe that only applies to me. Okay, Ed, let's try to motor through this a little bit more because I think everybody gets the idea that we get this. All right, next up.
Solution. Our dating platform restores honesty to online dating by letting trusted friends vouch for key facts and highlight your true personality through what we call the sphere of trust. Will, I'm going to give you your flowers. I know you work hard. And also to this founder, this is way different than what I initially first saw. This is straightforward, fits in one sentence, and checks all the boxes because it addresses what we saw in the problem, dishonesty, and we're saying we're restoring honesty. And it explains exactly what it is, how we did it, and it kind of just it titillates me a little bit. It sets me up to say, all right, the sphere of trust. I'm interested in how this works, Will.
Okay, so I agree with everything you said. I also think that this might be a cool opportunity in that white space below to show a picture of someone providing that feedback. So we can kind of just see what that looks like. In other words, if it was me vouching for you, Ed, it might say something like, I went to school with Ed at X university and can vouch for the fact that he's like the nicest guy I've ever met. Right? Just something that shows that stamp being provided in a way that makes me go, oh, I get it now. I get it. Now, you wouldn't have to do that. And a lot of times I'll actually say, let's take out graphics.
Right.
But I'm only saying it here is because it kind of displays the form factor, if you will, of what that would look like in the real world to make me go, I see it now. Because still we're kind of amorphous in what this concept or what it looks like.
Right. You're talking about augmenting, and I just want to address a comment that we got from chat talking about, images from AI, Gen AI, that are meant to be photorealistic can look creepy. It has this effect, what we call the uncanny valley, where you're just like, wait a sec, that just doesn't look right. I'm not talking about using those images. I'm talking about using conceptual images. ChatGPT can create icons, graphics, total like artwork that allows you to illustrate. And I would agree, Will, even if you had like just some icons, two people connecting up, and then they had more icons connected, one person saying, check, 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 I confirm education, all those things. That to me would enhance this just a little bit more.
Yeah. And again, everything makes sense. I'd like to see some visual of a person vouching for somebody on some of these topics that are so important. Like, I'm kind of interested as to how, and it doesn't have to be addressed here, how someone would vouch for somebody's body type.
Right. Yes. Very interesting.
Like that's a really speculative thing. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying like it doesn't have to be done here. I'm just saying some of these things that we're asking you to vouch for, and again, I talked with the founder about this, specifically things like body type, intention, that could have a lot of different ways that could go, right? Like Ed's a really good guy. It doesn't necessarily mean Ed's ready to get married.
Right.
It'd be tough for me to be able to verify your intention there. And again, we can get through that through the rest of the deck. I'm just pointing out early that it's something that I want to start to see happen and go, oh shit, I can see that.
Founder, you have the permission to use me and say, have Will confirming that Ed has a dad bod. You're allowed to do that. Okay. Confirming body type. That's totally there. But let me answer this, right? Just want to throw that out there. We got to have a little fun here. Throwing it out there, the founder asked, should I add a screenshot in the app of what the app looks like? The answer is, Will give us the answer.
All I want to see, and again, this is your deck, not mine, but all I want to see is the person that's vouching, okay? The trusted friend, and maybe like, Ed K, and like maybe their relationship in a little speech bubble or something like it, that explains how they're vouching, so that when I read that, I go, oh, I could see why someone else would believe that.
We are not at the point where we need to see a screenshot of an app. In fact, it can be quite distracting in that we have no idea what's going on. And rarely do founders pull off these screenshots in a way that enhances. It just ends up kind of working against you.
Yeah,
So
app screenshots are shitty ways to present how a product works. Everyone uses them for the obvious reasons because we try to be hyper literal about how the product works. In this stage of the presentation, kind of how we're explaining the concepts, we just need a better representation of how the concept works, not literally this is what the screen looks like.
okay, let's look again. Well, I just know this is your work here. Initially, we're tackling the $2 billion Southern California market. On the left, 100 million number of adult singles, not exclusively looking for hookup and have friends. The average spend online data per year, 243, explaining why we're looking at them. So break us down, Will. What are the mechanics of this slide?
Well, if we're tackling the $2 billion Southern California market, it's not just as important to say why we're doing that. It's why are we tackling that market specifically? What is it about that market where we can thumb the scale or we have some unfair advantage in that market? Now, this founder is from Southern California, so that's a local market. But up until this point, the audience doesn't know that. So again, it'd be hard to ascertain why we're going after that market first. We're also not aware yet that being localized, being, like parochial to a region means anything in online dating. Now, you would probably say, yeah, it does because people are close to each other and they tend to date physically, so being parochial would matter. But mind you, we haven't necessarily explained that yet. So what I might modify this to say, Ed, is I might say, hey, we're starting in the $2 billion Southern California market because we believe we can build a high concentration of singles in that area, and we're from that area, so to speak. But I want to know that the initial market you're going after is where you have the best probability of early traction.
Right. And this boils down to personal preference. I understand I was a little disconnected in terms of the average spent online data per year. Is that the whole market or California or why? So I had that question. For me, well, this would be improved. If I was writing it, I would say there are 100 million adults that could be our customers. We are focusing initially on the Southern California market, which is $2 billion. And then just give me a list of why. Like, we're local there or, et cetera. To me, that would have done it as well. But I can understand what's most important about this is that the founder has taken a thoughtful approach to the market versus just slapping some top-down statistics.
Okay, but I'm going to ask you to do something, Ed. I'm going to ask you to imprint in your head. I'm not going to quiz you on this one, but imprint on your head 100 million as the number of singles that exclusively looking for a hookup and have friends. Can you go back to the problem slide?
Oh, problem. Yep.
Yep. Here we're saying 53 million singles.
Exactly.
Whenever we have a disconnect between this number and the TAM number, it always raises eyebrows. Now, this smart founder, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. But typically, when we're in the problem statement, we're always using the TAM, the total addressable market, the total number of people that could potentially use our product in that opening statement.
I want to address a question from the audience, which also is a great way for you to understand how investors cycle through this. The audience member asked, how does this actually work? Like, how are we solving the problem?
Yeah.
That's actually a good sign because when we're looking through the deck, initially, we just want to know problem, solution. We understand the problem. Is there potential for the solution? How it works? If you've done this correctly, that will naturally be a question that investors are going to ask, and they'll want to thumb through the rest of the deck. So mission accomplished. Once again, flowers to the founder here, and Will, you working together with them?
Yeah, of course. And to your point, that's what the rest of the deck is there to do. The rest of the deck is say, hey, you're interested in the problem, but I bet you want to know how it works, which is where we go next.
Right. Okay. So just to append your point, double click there. If you said, there are 53 million singles that could be using our app. We're focusing on the 10 million in Southern California. And by the way, it's okay, everyone, if your initial market, your beachhead is small. Investors understand that they'd rather have you focus and dominate a niche and explain why than just try and boil the ocean.
You bet. And Ed, if I can append to that a little bit.
Yeah.
My thought as a quasi-investor would be, look, if they can't sell to the customers that are in their own backyard, or if they can't sell to the customers they already have relationships with, or, that they can thumb the scale on, no chance in hell they're going to sell to everybody else.
Exactly.
So, I always use this in the term of selling the iPhone. If you can't sell to the people that are lined up around the corner at the Apple store, it doesn't matter who else is in your TAM.
And that is a perfect opportunity to demonstrate founder market fit, if you can
Mhm.
explain the strategy behind it,
You
it's
bet.
great.
Yep.
So here we go. How it works. Once again, love it already. Singles can build real connections directly from their mobile app, right? I've got a little dissonance here because you've set me up for the promise of building circles of trust, the sphere of trust, and that's not mentioned. That's my number one question I have. So that's what I
Hey,
want
Ed,
to address.
isn't that the first point?
No, it doesn't answer it for me.
I wonder if okay, let me say that differently. Let me paraphrase then.
Sure.
I don't know that building connections in your mobile app is really what we care about.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
it's singles can build connections, can build real connection. Well, hold on. I don't want to say build real connections for a second. I want to say like can verify people through a sphere of trust.
Exactly. You can say
Okay.
right off the mobile app or, that's great. That's fine if you want to say that, but you just answered the question that's been burning in my mind since I got to this part of the deck.
So perhaps what we're saying is singles can, and again, I'm not trying to wordsmith it, but basically at a high level, paraphrasing, singles can verify people based on a circle of trust or sphere of trust. And then we explain that we form the sphere of trust where your friends vouch for your age, body type, education, highlight your personality backed by unique moments to them. I like that a lot. I feel like that's very descriptive. Matching singles use the app to find compatible matches based on trust and personality. Let me think about that. I just want to unpack that for a second. Ed, when you think about you're single, picture your doppelganger who didn't pick up someone at an airport for $3,000. Ted Mang, you're
He's a good guy, well intentioned.
damn Ted Mang. Anyway, so Ted's got this issue where he's afraid that the people he's going to meet online are scammers, spammers, what have you. And so the first thing he's looking for, the first thing he searches for when he's going to the match singles part is what? What is he so concerned about? Like, in other words, we've got here based on trust and personality. Here's the, Ed, let me throw this at you. One of the things that I talked to the founder about this is I said, I feel like trust is the foundation for this whole app. And what I said was, I think because of how the app works, only people who are willing to be trustworthy are going to want to use it.
Right.
In other words, if I'm a scammer, this
Yeah.
thing makes my job so hard, I try to avoid it. Now, scammers try to get into everything, but I think it almost has an implicit filter that the people going there are the ones that are trying to not lie about their body type or how many kids they've had or things like that.
Right. It goes back in the day. I remember Reid Hoffman, when he was doing LinkedIn, he said, we're going to use real names and your resume. And everybody said, you're nuts. You're absolutely crazy. Now, we look back on that, we go, that was a no-brainer. But Will,
Wasn't at the time.
you hooked me. Exactly what you said. Trust, who's going to use it. And that's why, Will, right away, I'm salivating by this point in time on the how it works slide. I want to know how we build this sphere of trust properly, because I've got all the questions that you were talking about. And some of this information here is a little, I would say, taken for granted. Like, I know I'm going to subscribe. I know we're going to get matched. So walk me through how someone builds a sphere of trust and show me the magic, because I know for a fact this founder, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, founder, you have a patent on this. So put out that magic. That's what we want to present.
Okay, so let me zoom out there for a second. Maybe what we're saying is, and I think one of our guests in this chat actually said this, is maybe this how it works is more about how does the vouch process work, not how do dating apps work, right?
Exactly.
We know that dating apps go on there and they match by certain traits, etc. We know that they subscribe to the app. Who cares? Like, we don't have to tell that story. The story we're trying to tell is this is how we create and match through a trusted connection.
Right.
So if I were to zoom that out a bit again and I were to look at that differently, I like the first step, saying friends vouch for your age, body type, etc. Maybe the second step has something to do with showing how when people are searching, every search displays verified criteria that are important to the person looking, right?
Let me back up one step previous. I want to know, Will, how I get my friends to vouch for me. Do I just invite them to scan my email? Do I send them a personal invitation? That's the one friction point that I worry about most.
Okay, so what you could do if you wanted, again, if you felt strongly that that was an important friction point that you wanted to unpack, you could make that step one. You invite your friends to the sphere of trust and they participate because.
Right.
Like, you'd have to show what their incentive to help you is, okay? There's also another part of it is, what's to say that people that you're inviting that are vouching for you aren't your scammer buddies sitting next to you at your scammer call center?
Right.
Right. So there's a little bit of that. And then maybe the second step is them vouching for you. And the third step is then you now match with people through verified traits.
Right. So I think we got the gist. For all the rest of you founders, what you want to do is you want to be thinking about, one, how's the customer get from problem to solution, and explain it in a way that the investor goes, oh, that totally makes sense. What a novel idea. That's amazing. If you can do that, you win. And yes, verified, there's a patent. Man, explain that. Like, we have a patented way that this, comes together. I know there's more magic. and I just want to see this in the deck.
Hey, Ed, another thing to consider. You mentioned LinkedIn. I think this is a really important point. Back in the day when LinkedIn was getting some steam, part of what made it interesting, people wouldn't accept your LinkedIn connection. Like now, anybody accepts anything. I have like 30,000 LinkedIn connections. I have no idea who anybody of those people are. But in the early days, the idea was I'm only going to accept someone's connection if I trust them. Okay. So what was happening early on was that the people you connected to in their level of trust from other people started to build this social graph that said, these are the most valid, legit people because they're consistently linked to the most valid, legit people.
Yes.
The reason I say this is because this is a really powerful mechanic within this system. I just said a moment ago that if I hop on there and I'm a scammer and I invite 5 scammer friends to say, Will is 6'4" and he looks like Brad Pitt, then technically people vouched for me. But if nobody vouched for them or other people didn't vouch for me, like if you don't have different points, and I'm sure that the founder has this covered, I think part of what we would want to talk about maybe later in the deck is how as more people participate, the validity, the truthfulness, the trust improves.
That's one thing. Great point. Network effects come into play here, and that would make this startup really valuable. Something to think about, definitely for sure. Let's motor along here. Competition. Right away, I like how clean it is. I like how basic it is. I'm having a hard time. I want the lines and the X's, Will. I want the checkmark screen. I want the X's. It's too clean for me, but I really like the information there because it's got it ticks the box and supports what the customer wants versus, it's mobile or it's just generic stuff.
A couple of things you could do to clean this up, potentially. One of the things you could do is you could group companies that are awfully similar. Okay? Yep. So, for example, if Match, eHarmony, and Zeus were all kind of the same product, if you will, I might group them as one column. Right? You just put all 3 logos in there. And the fact that their verification is slightly different, et cetera, I could put something like kind of grouping them saying it's somewhere between contact info and in a charge, right? Contact info, photos, or 595 fee. You don't have to singularly list. You don't have to singularly list every single competitor. A couple other things. What's missing from this is a single sentence that summarizes what you want me to take away from this. What that sentence should say, the structure of it should say, this is what our users want. And you're saying basically throughout the chart, and this is why they can't get it elsewhere.
And you pick the one thing that makes you stand out. And right now, if I look, I might be wrong about this, but I think Dating Sphere, this app is the only one that brings in the outside people to vouch for you. And so that would be something that you could highlight. The other piece of feedback I have is just saying third person perspective. It's a little too paraphrase for me to interpret. Just explain in third person vouching or something to explain it just a little bit better, because you lost me at third person perspective. I'm like, what perspective is that, right? Those are the nitpicky things, but overall the content of this competition slide, I think we got all the raw materials we need.
What's the difference between third person perspective and vouchers, Ed?
That's what I've been asking.
We're introducing personality compatibility, but I'm not sure up until this point where we made personality compatibility a unique selling proposition for us.
For example, this would be a power move, vouch personality assessment with vouching or confirmation or verification of those personality traits. That's another thing that we could add.
I'm sure I'm missing something, but I almost feel like third person perspective, vouchers, and verification are actually the same thing.
Exactly.
And look, nice little neat hack for this, for those of you that are watching this and saying, how do I apply this to my business? Ed, if you would, please jump back to the problem slide. In most cases, whatever we said the key categories of problems are, in this one, there could be 2 groups. It could be hookup seekers, spammers, or scammers, or it could be age, body type, and education. Typically, whatever those things are that we're saying are the problem are copy pasted into the categories of the competition.
Right.
Okay. Because we're specifically saying those are the problem areas. And so when we say, here's the competition, we're basically saying how they don't solve those problem areas.
Yeah.
So it's always a facsimile of the 2.
Yeah, that is a real good hack. That's actually a power move right there. And I know a lot of people aren't big fans. This actually might be simple enough to put in a magic quadrant model, but I'm just pontificating.
Damn it, Ed, you and your magic quadrant.
I love the quadrant model sometimes, Will. I gotta say, it doesn't work for everyone, but yeah. Okay, traction. Okay. Scalable iOS, Android apps acquired 10,000 plus users.
Love that.
Got the headline, and I know exactly where we stand. Got intellectual property. This is where we mentioned the patents. Scalable mobile app, user acquisition. So I know they're trying to get to the 3 buckets that you always say, put in the traction slide, which is state of the product, validation from users, what's going on with users, and then any type of growth.
Here's what I like about this. The first thing I thought about is It's got 10,000 users. Not 0 users, not 10 users, 10,000. Now, in the consumer space around dating, et cetera, that's a small number, and that's fine. I'm not knocking the number. I'm just saying, like, relative, if this was an enterprise B2B app, you'd be a public company by this point. So again, in this space, there are a lot more users, but I don't care. 10,000 users is meaningful, right? The IP that we're talking about here, I might want to try to find a way to clean that up a little bit. I don't really care if you have trademarks, unless trademarks are a specific part of your competitive moat. I don't think this is. I mean, like, lots of people have trademarks. Said differently, like almost anybody can have a trademark.
Right.
But the patent's legit. Now, a patent's only as useful as your ability to defend it. Whole other discussion. I love the patent. I love that the mobile app's out there, and I know the state of the product, and I love the fact that they've got 10,000 users. Now, the fact that they're acquiring them lower than their competitors, I'm just not going to believe that. I believe that fact is true, but I know a lot of people that do user acquisition in the dating space. Really hard to tell that story that you're going to be able to outpace them at scale.
And I'll tell you what a savvy investor is going to do. They're going to poke holes in this, just to let you know. I like the simplicity. I like where we're going. I agree with Will. Just tell me you got 2 patents, right? That's it. That's all. I don't need the rest of that paragraph there. And 10,000 users. So immediately, the investor is going to look at the metrics that are relevant to this startup. So I know for a fact, dating apps, they live and die off matches, right? Not just users. So someone could download an app, you count that as download, and that could be considered a vanity metric. So I want to know what the activity is. I want to know retention rates, all those things. So if you have those traction numbers, great. And then if you give me a monolithic number, and I'm just going to kind of give a PSA to everybody. Everyone, if you give a monolithic number and say, we made $1 million, immediately that investor, if they're a startup investor, they're going to say, great. In what time frame? What's the velocity of that? If you say made $1 million, growing 10% week over week, over the last 90 days, well, that's a way different story than we made $1 million. And so investors are going to drill into that, and you want to be prepared. So that's the reason, being precise and being honest. Like, don't embellish, don't hide, but just be straightforward with your numbers and share the metrics that investors are going to care about. That's how you win on these traction slides with this type of traction.
Yeah. The other thing I'd love to see, because it's very endemic to what this is, I would love to see, of the 10,000 people, how many had a friend invite that worked, right? In other words, and I'm sure the numbers aren't stellar right now. That's fine. But if I were to say, look, 1 out of every 5 people that's joined us has joined from a user that's invited them. From a circle of trust, because that's a really serious trust. That's a very powerful user acquisition mechanism.
Right.
Good. So I think that, some of those stats could be helpful here.
Yes. And well, this is where I'm going to bring up something that I know, and just you triggered it for me, is the secret to this is the fear of trust, people vouching. That's the metric that I want to see. I want to know how many people sign up to vouch for, Ed and his dad bod, right? Or and his comedic timing and his scintillating personality. I want to know that, because if you can show me those numbers, boy, will I ever be a believer.
But here's the big part. We're talking about those people coming and vouching for you. But what we really should be talking about is every person that I invite to vouch for me is a potential customer that's like, oh shit, that's how this thing works? I can find real people? I want to find real people.
Network effects. You can vouch for each other right there. But this is where I'm going to explain in terms of competition. I know you got the big apps out there. Will, just the other day, these apps, everybody's trying to solve this problem. And I got an invite from a buddy of mine who's single, and he went out and got this sort of low code. He went and used like an AI agent, and he created a dating app called I want to introduce you to my friend, or meet my friend.ai or whatever. Exactly the same concept, but his whole thing was, I'm going to engage people who have people to recommend, not go for the user, but adjacent. And I said, wow, that's funny. I've literally got, multiple founders trying to solve this same problem. And he's taking a different thing. And that's where getting the traction out there and showing that we understand, we like the value proposition, but getting that traction is going to be the biggest hurdle for this type of space. Growth strategy, ad platforms are our main user acquisition channel. So now we got ad platforms, sphere of trust, advice, UGC contests, partner with influencer restaurant business. Here's what I like, Will. I like that we highlighted the main channel that has been happening. And I like that we've got a little bit of a strategy going on. What I don't like is I don't have any insight into how any of this is going.
Fair. I would consider representing this differently. Here's why. Because at the flags that I'm seeing is, if you're acquiring users through ad platforms, that scares the hell out of me.
Yeah,
because
it should.
Competing with people who have vastly more experience and budgets at that level, at the first kind of line of attack, if you will. What I would love to see is maybe a growth strategy that says the sphere of trust invites are our secret weapon.
That's good.
Okay. And this is where I would show the node effect, that every time that we invite someone to our sphere of trust, they are X% likely to invite 3 more people who are X% likely to invite more people. It's essentially how a social network grows, but really hammer in on the reason this works is because each node, which is a person that comes on there to date, has a vested interest in encouraging their sphere of trust to join the site and, more importantly, use it. And I think that is an incredibly powerful growth strategy. Now, of course, you're going to say, cool, but you still have to get the first people to show up and use it. And at that point, I can have all kinds of, I can use ad platforms, et cetera. But where I'd want to focus the bulk of this is that, look, when Match.com spends $10 to acquire a user, and it's way higher than that, but $10 to acquire a user, they get 1 user. When we spend $10 to acquire a user, because of our sphere of trust and the additional nodes it creates, we bring 28 users.
That would be amazing. That shows an ROI. Well, we need to stop on this because I know the founders in the audience, and a lot of our founders struggle with this, Will. When you say to an investor, my growth is paid growth, we're doing ads, just like Will said, the investor is going to immediately be scared. That is one of the scariest propositions because you're just literally going to light money on fire. And it is so fragmented out there that investors now expect you to have some type of organic or if you do pay, like we'll talk about, an exponential ROI on what you do pay for, and you have to figure that out. And when a founder says, yeah, but I need your money to go and get users, that is it's a red flag. That is a non-starter right there. You have to be able to go to investors and say, we have hacked away to that exponential growth, and now we just need your money to pour gasoline on the fire, Will.
Yep.
Explain this a little more. Let's really do them a service.
The go-to-market, in this case, the growth strategy is all about, here's the one way we're going to do it differently, okay? So, Ed, if you flip back to that slide, I'll just kind of narrate over it. The problem is, other than the sphere of trust, which is why I highlighted it, everything else on here, I could put on literally any other company's growth strategy, right? This is the most generic growth strategy there is, which means it's useless. And as you know, I teach a class in middle school to entrepreneurship, and I teach the students how to create a growth strategy. And again, these are middle schoolers, in my case, 5th through 8th grade. And tomorrow is our pitch deck competition, which is great. But when you do the growth strategy, every single one of them, Ed, says, and we're going to do a collab with Taylor Swift, right? Like every single one of them. And I always tell them, tell me what you're going to do different, new, that no one else would think about, that no one else would think about. And that's what this growth strategy, if this were me, for my slide, I would say, here's the plan. We're going to say that for the average dating site, it costs them, I'm making up the number, I know it's higher, $10 to acquire a single customer. Because of our sphere of trust, a single acquired customer for us yields 15.2 new users, which means we have a fraction of what the individual user acquisition cost is for our competitors. That's why we can afford to spend on ad platforms, because our ROI is exponentially higher.
Please, we say this to you founders because we want you to be prepared to have those difficult, awkward conversations with investors. Yeah. I literally was talking to a general partner investor, writes early stage checks, and he said, Ed, there's no excuse today. It costs so little to develop a product. There's no excuse for a founder not to know how they can ship the product, launch it in the marketplace, and monetize it. You don't need to be making millions, but you have to show without my capital how you've gone out and monetized your product. And that is the barrier of entry that we're just letting all you founders know, because we don't want you to get disappointed. We want you to be fully prepared.
Agreed.
Well, that's all the time that we have for today. How would you wrap up this assessment? I got one question. Can it be estimation at this stage of the company in terms of what the coefficient number will be?
Totally.
You see that comment, Will? Yeah.
100%. It can absolutely be an estimation, and it can be totally wrong. The point is it's more than one. If your competitors on average are, for every person they acquire, they essentially get 1 user, and you get 3, I said 15, I just made the number up. Don't worry about it being right. No one's going to say, hey, in 1992, you told me that it was going to be exactly 15.5, and now it's 6.4. It's not the way this works. You're saying this is roughly what we think it's going to be based on some information we have, and over time, we'll find out what it's actually going to be.
Right, and that's the reason putting in revenue, explaining, knowing your numbers. You don't have to be right, because all investors know it's a moving target. You don't have to figure it out right away. That's what working with investors and their capital is for, to continue to iterate as you go. 100%. Will, how would you wrap this up? This has been really good. And again, kudos to this founder being courageous, coming up here, putting yourself out here on the line. And Will, appreciate you working with this founder. This had a lot of really great things I think our community could learn. How would you summarize this?
I'd summarize it by saying, I get so anxious when I see great ideas that could lose their opportunity to get funded or get capital, whatever, because they weren't presented properly. And Ed, we see a hell of a lot of decks. And I look at that and I look at a deck like this and I look at a founder like this and I say, you have such a good idea. Let's make sure we don't miss a single beat on this deck. Right. And that's a big part of what we're going through this to do, to say, like, let's think of everything that you as a founder probably aren't thinking about. I think this is a great founder. And I say this not just for this founder, but for the other founders that have shown their decks. Ed, it says something about the founder when they're willing to say, give me feedback. I'm going to say now, remember, these founders don't get to say a thing during this, right? Like, this is totally naked feedback. That is hard to do, but it's a sign of a great founder.
Right. And I can also verify, Will, having spent time with this founder, I completely agree. This is the type of founder that people want to invest in. We just have to get his story out there and sharpen that tip of the arrow. And that's what we're here to do.
I agree.
Will, as always, this has been great. Just a little reminder. I know we had some questions. How do we get a deck review? Just contact us. All right.
Yep.
And if you're out there watching this on YouTube, leave a comment and we'll let you know. We're responding. We want to interact with you and we appreciate everything. One request that we have is share this content, what we do with other founders out there, and spread the love. We're putting it out there. We want to help the startup ecosystem at large. Will, last word to you.
Yeah. Same as this bit is the business we were just talking about. You are now all the nodes for this knowledge. Go share it with as many people as possible. Our job is to create as many nodes as possible of people who can help create more entrepreneurs. For now, the next step, go help create a bunch of more nodes, a bunch more entrepreneurs, help spread that love.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out. We'll see you next time.